Throughout the years, Wally and I had often dreamed of spending an extended period of time in Germany. For me, the dream was not only Germany. It was the dream of going to a place that was saturated with music. A place where I could get closer to the conductors that I admired. A place where I could get closer to the great composers like Johann Sebastian Bach, Heinrich Schütz, Felix Mendelssohn. Composers for whom theology and faith were inseparable from music. I dreamed of going to a place where I could hear so many of the great German choral works performed by native speakers. Wonderful dream, but only a dream until there appeared a glimmer of hope of a sabbatical.
Summer 2002. After 7 years of teaching at PBI, my husband had been granted a sabbatical year. With our son Stefan, we were heading for Germany, where James planned to study at the International Bach Academy in Stuttgart. The academy was founded by the now internationally renowned conductor Helmut Rilling. The idea of living in my cultural homeland was exciting, but as we began realistic planning, all we could see was an endless row of hurdles to jump over. With many questions left unanswered, we booked our tickets. As we moved forward, miracle after miracle occurred. Incoming staff were excited to be able to rent our house for a year. Emmy McDonald, fellow staff member here at PBI, referred us to a German missionary couple that she and her husband had met while they were working in Africa. They told us about an academy for world missions located near Stuttgart. Thanks to email nowadays and a wonderful bilingual administrator over there, Carmen Krause, we were able to book a few rooms in their student housing to use immediately on arrival and until we got settled or found something different. Then, our neighbor, Lorraine Mertz, introduced us to a German who was visiting in Three Hills. Another real godsend. Of all the places in Germany, guess where he lived? You're right, close to Stuttgart. And although it was the evening before his departure, he took the time to come over and answer all kinds of questions. Then, suddenly, he asked us whether we had a ride from the airport. Not yet, we replied. Well then, I'll pick you up. We were amazed. This man who hardly knew us was offering to pick us up and take us to our rooms. It was the beginning of a special friendship, and through him we experienced all kinds of firsts in Germany. Mr. Bram always made sure we saw anything new that was happening in Germany. So, with great anticipation, the time of departure had arrived and we drove to the Calgary airport. But it was not quite time for us to go. God had orchestrated something else. He decided to call James's 92-year-old mother home before we left, and he planned to do it in such a way that we would be there for the funeral. So there we were at the airport, and before we could check in, we were told that James's mother had suffered a serious stroke. We were able to make flight changes. Air Canada graciously reworked our tickets so we were allowed to fly to Winnipeg. And since she had passed away, we were able to arrange the funeral and then a week later continue our journey from Winnipeg to Stuttgart.
I guess I had a kind of ambivalent excitement about the upcoming year. I didn't ever just stop to think about what my life would actually look like in Germany. But then in the airplane looking down onto Germany, I suddenly really dreaded the upcoming months and wondered how in the world I was gonna do this.
Another miracle was waiting for us when we arrived in Germany. The Bible school, where we had booked 2 rooms, approached us as we were heading out on our apartment hunt and said, "We just happen to have an apartment empty this year. Would you be interested?" So we went and looked at the other one and compared it with this and decided that this one was our favorite. "Come, let me show you our wonderful furnished apartment with a rent within our budget. How blessed we were to have everything we needed: furniture, beds, desks, closets, cupboards, sofa, and even an equipped kitchen. Even goose down, duvets, bedding, and towels were provided, all with bi-monthly laundering. Soon we were settled in our own clean, pretty apartment on the 3rd story with a beautiful view of the city of Korntal. Life was wonderful as we learned to cook and enjoy local specialties such as Maultaschen, spinach-filled noodles, Spätzle, and the delicious German bread.
The first moment we arrived in Korntal, I liked it. It just somehow appealed to me deep inside. It was weird looking back today, and I marvel at how God led us to such a perfect place without us having a clue about where we were going. It all started the first Sunday that we attended church in Korntal. I was invited to join some guys for cappuccino in the city, and thereafter those guys made sure I was invited to everything else. They did much more than just say hi on Sundays. One of them even went out of his way to make sure I attended a professional soccer game. Before long, my life began revolving around this body of believers. Monday night, it was youth group. Tuesday night, it was youth choir. Wednesdays, it was brass choir. And Thursday nights, it was a home Bible study. School, of course, was a big part of my life. God, too, had his hand in this, and I was able to attend the local public school just 10 minutes away from our apartment. The school system is quite different in Germany. After grade 4, students are streamed in 3 different directions, depending on their intellectual gifts and desired areas of future study. These 3 directions are the Hauptschule, Realschule, and Gymnasium. I attended a gymnasium which goes up to grade 13 and allows graduates to enter university in any area of desired study. I was considered a guest student, which meant that the school did not give me a report card and that teachers understood that I was simply there to learn as much as I could. I was placed in the homeroom class of Frau Siebert, where I was warmly accepted as the Canadia. Another huge blessing were 2 very strong Christian girls who became really good friends. We met together with a handful of other Christians every Tuesday morning at 7:15 a.m. for a half hour of Bible study, encouragement, and prayer. I found my time away from the sheltered Christian setting of prairie to be stretching and strengthening. It was great to learn how Christianity worked out in such a non-Christian setting, and as I heard just before leaving, God allowed me to be a real bridge between my Christian friends and the numerous non-Christians in the school.
Ça va bien? Bon, alors, et tout le monde va bien? Tout le monde va bien. Il y a du soleil, hein? Il y a du soleil au nord, hein? Alors, du soleil, ou on peut dire il fait beau, hein? Il fait beau. Aujourd'hui, il fait beau. Hein? Beau. Tout le monde, il fait beau.
The school day started quite early, at 7:50 a.m. But after intense classes, with only a short 20-minute break, the day also ended early at 1 p.m.
Ich hab doch schon einen. Schauen wir mal, wie viele noch gehen. Ganz alleine. Nachher noch so ein Schlagzeugkonzert. Ich denke, da passiert.
Then I was home for lunch, prepared by a stay-at-home mom who always had a hot meal waiting for me. This year was also special in that I had both mom and dad around so much. Before I left, I was kinda leery about a year with just my parents, but looking back, it was a real gift. It's not every day that you have mom and dad seeing you off to school. In the past, it had been the other way around.
Music, music, music. A dream come true. Just a few days after we arrived, the year started off with an incredible rush as I watched two of the world's finest conductors in rehearsal and performance. The first was Helmut Rilling, whose name is closely associated with that of Johann Sebastian Bach and the International Bach Academy. But his career is much larger than the music of Bach. As a versatile, open-minded, inquisitive, and unconventional musician, he brings a depth of understanding to all music. But of even greater importance is the way in which he brings people together through music. For example, in the Europäisches Musikfest, which focused on the music and life of Beethoven, he was responsible for bringing together approximately 200 young musicians, singers and instrumentalists from 28 different countries. Because of his vision, and because of the trust that he has built up over the years, government and private business paid for all travel and living costs for these students. The focus was on students, student conductors, student soloists, and student orchestral players, all working together on Beethoven's Fidelio and Missa Solemnis. On the orchestral side, I was able to observe Sir Roger Norrington rehearse and perform all 9 of Beethoven's symphonies. The clarity, the logic, the meaning, the emotional depth that he brought to these pieces was truly astounding. In the days that followed, hours passed like minutes as I experienced countless blissful moments in the wonderful library of the International Bach Academy. And every weekend concerts, as many as time and finances would allow. Sometimes the most difficult part was deciding which one to go to.
While Stefan was in school and James did his studies, I thoroughly enjoyed being a German Hausfrau. Observing my love for plants, I was soon given the job of watering and caring for the more than 100 houseplants located in the dining room and the 4 lounges of the building. Germans enjoy plants, not only in their yards, but also inside their homes. In Germany, the main meal is usually eaten at noon, so I would try to have it ready when Stefan, finished with school, arrived home at 1:15. Then, when the kitchen downstairs lost a staff member just before Christmas, Gertrud, the cook, would sometimes call me down for help and repaid me with wonderful meals from the dining room, exchanging hourly wages for laundry costs.
Es gibt Sauerkraut. Was noch? Sauerkraut und Kartoffelbrei und Kassler. Meine Nacken ist geraubt, gevögelt.
As time passed, we began to see how miraculously God had led us. Not only were all our needs for housing, James's study, Stefan's schooling being met, but we began to appreciate the wonderful Christian community that God had brought us to. In many ways, it was the European equivalent to our present home in Three Hills. We had prayed for a good church home, and we found it. A place where music was esteemed and where worship services were characterized by reverence and good preaching. James and I had the rare privilege of singing in choir together. Both of us fell in love with the first song we rehearsed. It was Mendelssohn's Psalm 42, entitled Wie der Hirsch schreit, or As the Deer Pants for Living Water. Our involvement provided for a great variety of activities.
In February, I received a second massive dose of music during the 5th Bach Woche, or Bach Week. All of the cantatas that were performed during this week were based on psalm texts. And so for a week we were immersed in the Bible's greatest songbook. The highlight and most thought-provoking aspect of the week for me occurred each morning during the Podiumgespräch. Each morning, the cantatas that were to be performed that evening were discussed by a panel of experts. Helmut Rilling moderated the discussion. Herr Dr. Ulrich Prinz, gave the perspective of the musicologist. Professor Dr. Martin Petzold, a member of the theological faculty at the University of Leipzig, gave insights into the theological thought at the time of Bach. Dekan Peter Kresik applied the biblical text to our present-day situation. Insights into the solos were given by 4 professional soloists: Claycy Kelly, soprano, Ingeborg Dantz, alto, James Taylor, tenor, and Thomas Quasthoff, bass. The cumulative insight was truly inspiring and brought a richness and depth of understanding to the music that I have rarely experienced.
I didn't go into the year with a lot of expectations, but I did make one request to God. I somehow wanted to be an encouragement to the Christian youth in Germany and be a light for God. The evening before I left, some of my closer friends from church and school invited me out for an ice cream. As we sat around before saying a final goodbye, we started sharing our testimonies. Somehow they got around to expressing how grateful they were for the encouragement I had been to them and how I had been able to impact the class at school. I just looked at them and was like, what? I didn't do anything. You guys are the ones who've been such an encouragement and blessing to me. I mean, I haven't done anything extra special. At that point, God opened my eyes and reinforced my belief in a very important principle. Serving God isn't about the big things. Instead, it's about the little things that dictate the way you live and react to the small everyday situations. Without knowing it, God had used me.
Any place begins to feel like home when you understand the culture, speak the language, and make friends. Our involvement in church helped us to develop many friendships, and since I had the time, I could accept many invitations for coffee, birthday parties, breakfasts out, etc. One special time was spent at the Rühles, where a number of my friends took time to thank me for my friendship and pray God's blessing upon our future as we were leaving.
Und ich habe geschrieben, heute zum kleinen Abschied möchten wir dir und deinem lieben Mann dieses hebräische Wort mitgeben, euch den Frieden des Herrn und seinen reichen Segen wünschen auf eurem Weiterweg. Ihr habt viel Freude mitgebracht, als ihr zu uns kamt, und wir hatten manch frohe Gemeinschaft mit euch und danken euch dafür von ganzem Herzen. Nun hoffen wir, dass ihr in Freuden auszieht und in Frieden geleitet werdet, wie es in Jesaja 55 steht. Es grüßen euch herzlich die 5 Frauen vom Alt. Und diese
Das hat sie selbst gestickt.
Das ist also
Das stickt sie ja. Das stickt sie selbst. Macht sie selbst.
Und wir haben den Ja, Shalom, den Frieden des Herrn, den wünschen wir euch einfach.
Now, we had been warned that some friends wanted to have a small fellowship time after church on our last Sunday. As we walked from church to the hall where the farewell was to take place, we noticed the Posaunenchor waiting outside. As we came closer, they began to play in our honor. Inside, all the members of the choir and Posaunenchor had gathered. We soon realized that this was not going to be an informal gathering, for they had planned a comprehensive program with special choir songs, tributes, and gifts. There was even a special poem penned by Eugen Meyer, conductor of the Posaunenchor, in our honor. This poem described significant parts of our life in Korntal.
Kirchen- und Posaunenchor haben was Besonderes vor, dem James, der Waltraud und dem Sohn zu danken heute ohne Lohn. Für euren Einsatz allemal im weltbekannten Korntal. 7 Monate sind vergangen, seit ihr habt hier angefangen, in vielen, vielen langen Stunden das Lob des Höchsten zu erkunden und wie es die Deutschen hier wohl machen mit all den musikalischen Sachen.
Amen.
In unserer besonderen Gemeinde habt ihr euch eingebracht, jedes auf seine Weise. Die Waltraud in dem Kirchenchor sang laut und kräftig, nicht im Tenor, und wissbegierig wie sie war, in Heim und Schulen ging sie gar. Der Stefan in dem Kreis der Schüler, am Gymmi war er, und was trieb er? Er war doch nicht verwaist und ging in einen Schülerbildkreis. In den Posaunenchor und in den Üchtis, und das war's ihm wert und auch sehr wichtig. Und James, das Musikgenie, rief in die Sommerakademie zu lernen von der Creme de la Creme, Musik zu machen von Bach bis Pergolese. Schreibt sie mal. Und wie man es wohl schaffe, Helmut Rilling zum Maßstab sich machen. Vom Acker. Stefan, kennst du das Bild, ja? Vom Acker machen sie sich nun, nicht etwa um sich auszuruhen. Was neu erlernt, wird angewandt in Kanada, im Heimatland. Ihr ackert dort, wir ackern hier, mit viel Erfolg, das wünschen wir.
For 9 months, we experienced God's miraculous leading. The intensity and wonder never disappeared. It was there all the time. And as I saw all that God had planned for us, I began to feel His love and pleasure as I have never felt it before. Our roots are in Europe, and the experiences gave us a depth of understanding into our values. Quite simply, we came to understand why we are the way we are.